Hi, listeners. Welcome to today's episode. My name is Sergio, and I am here with Stephanie and Carlos. And together we are going to explore this idea of belonging when you're constantly told that you don't fit in. It is June 15, 2012, and Barack Obama steps up to the Rose Garden of the White House and announces a program called Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA, that has the potential to change the lives of thousands in this country who've grown in the shadows.
The Department of Homeland Security is taking steps to lift the shadow of deportation from these young people. Over the next few months, eligible individuals who do not present a risk to national security or public safety will be able to request temporary relief from deportation proceedings and apply for work authorization.
And it was at that moment that something big had happened, because up to that point, there was many advocates who had fought for an ability for undocumented folks to get work, go to school, and do things that regular people can do and that often get left for granted. And for people like myself that grew up in this program, it was the beginning of a journey that we would start where we would be included in society, but of course to an extent. So a story I have about my personal journey when I came to this country is that when I was immigrating here with my mother, I remember vividly how she told me, like, son, you can't bring any toys with you, and she just didn't allow me to put any of them in our luggage as we were coming here. And I, being a child, didn't listen to her, obviously, and I snuck in this replica of the Millennium Falcon.
That's no moon. It's a space station. It's too big to be a space station.
Very bad feeling about this.
That right there was a scene from Star Wars, New Hope, and it's the scene where the Millennium Falcon, which is this very famous spaceship in the Star Wars franchise, is approaching the home, basically, of Darth Vader, who's the villain in the whole story. And I just wanted to bring that to this episode because just to share how, as a child, I didn't know that I was coming to a whole new country, and for me, I guess I kept this toy from Star Wars because maybe deep down inside of me I knew that it was gonna be me just growing up 10 times as fast and losing a part of my childhood as I came here to this country. And unlike the Star Wars universe, where the Millennium Falcon took the heroes from planet to planet, I came to this country from Mexico. And here are some sounds from my childhood that I'll explain later what they are.
Hola.
¿Dónde era fácil?
¿De día o de noche?
These are the sounds from a bakery. Specifically, they are from the Mexican bakery that I grew up in. And it was at this bakery that I got to experience what it was like to be part of the undocumented community. Right? We had customers that woke up at 5 in the morning and would go work at construction sites and warehouses. And I was so proud to be serving them in one way or another. Where when I was helping my mom out there, as she worked as a cashier, and it was also the place where I started to wonder, right? Were these customers like hardworking, like very diligent? Were they falling under this concept that we have of what it means to be American, right? Although they didn't have a legal status, but they were here, they were in the country, and they were part of the society. And to add to that, I would ask myself when I switched over to being part of this DACA program, whether where was my place now? Was I in the undocumented community? Was I no longer part of it? And so this episode and the questions that we ask ourselves here have to do with belonging and where and how we see ourselves in what community we feel like we're part of. Thank you for listening. This is Carlos.
I was born in Mexico City and I was brought here when I was 1 year old. Well, I moved to Idaho. I basically grew up in Idaho. And only until like for school, I've been here on the East Coast. But yeah.
How's the weather over there right now?
It's dark. I'm not ready for it to get cold, but it's all right.
And Stephanie, she is a high school student. And what makes Stephanie such a great story for this episode is that, unlike Carlos and I, Stephanie is actually in the process of getting DACA. And she's been through this whole back and forth of DACA comes back in, DACA gets rescinded, you can apply, you can't apply. So she's experienced this. And so we get to see her viewpoint on how that feels, right? Like to have constant anxiety, like, can I apply to this program that could possibly change my life, right? So this is Stephanie.
Hi, and I'm actually a junior in high school here in New Jersey. I was actually born in Mexico, and I was brought here when I was only like 4 months. So I basically grew up here, and yeah, like New Jersey is the only place that I know.
One of the first things I asked Stephanie and Carlos was how they first learned about DACA.
I remember like on the news, they were talking about President Obama announced it or was going to announce, things like that. And my parents were really excited because we could get it, we'd qualify. It was my sister. I only have one sister, but they were excited for us. And so as soon as we were eligible, I forgot the age. I don't know if you guys know the age that you can get DACA.
Yeah, you have to be at least 15 years old at the time of submitting your request and under the age of 31.
But basically, like, my parents work at potato factories in Idaho. And one of the like business end people said that they could help people apply for DACA for free. And obviously we couldn't afford a lawyer or anything like that. So she really helped us out. Honestly, like if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have been able to get DACA. But yeah, it was a long process. But yeah, that's mostly when I first found out about DACA and getting it. Seeing my sister go through it first, and then when I turned of age, doing that. But yeah.
Two of my uncles, they're DACA recipients, so that's how I was actually able to find out about DACA. And well, I turned 15 and the process was like stopped because of the Trump administration. And then when they were able to fight it in court and reopen it again for new applicants, I was able to apply. But then again, it got shut down, and it keeps, it's like a whole cycle of it like shutting down, then reopening, and then shutting down, and then reopening.
As you heard, Stephanie heard about the DACA program from her family members, but she herself is currently in the process of getting DACA. And these are her thoughts on what that's like.
I had to go home for the pandemic, and I started I started getting a lot of like fears, because it's terrifying because you don't know what's gonna happen next. And so it's a lot of fear. Also, not knowing where to apply for colleges. A lot of your friends are getting jobs, however, you can't get a job, or a lot of your friends are getting their cars and you can't get a car because of this certain reason. So it's like really frustrating, like almost all the time. But I don't know. I keep trying to push forward, and I'm trying to do stuff that I could do, knowing my status. And so I remember when the Supreme Court ruled the huge victory on DACA. That was like a huge moment for me because I don't have to fear anymore. It was something changed inside of me. But then once again, when the Trump administration decided to stop the DACA process, I think in July. I'm not sure. I think it was around July. Again, it brought fear inside of me, and I was terrified.
For Stephanie, it has not been easy. She has gone through different moments when the program was rescinded, where it was open, and to add to that, this whole application process is not cheap. Like, the government charges us in order to apply. And so imagine being in the situation where you have to pay for a program that you may not know whether the next day or the next week may exist. The government charges us $495 every 2 years to renew, which means that they're making a lot of money, and it also means that it does add some type of financial stress to the recipient. The good thing is that, as Carlos shares with us, there are resources out there that can help you lessen the financial burden of this. And so here's Carlos talking to us about his experience with dealing with the cost of having DACA.
Thankfully, my parents did help out, at least definitely in the first few times of paying it. And like I said, we didn't have to worry about lawyers or anything, which is honestly a huge expense when trying to apply. I know I've heard some crazy stories of how much lawyers charge, and but yeah, so it's the $495, and I it always snuck up on me. I remember when I started working, and I would be okay, this and that, but it's coming up, and I gotta go start saving a little bit to go and pay that. It wasn't really until I went to undergrad in Delaware State, and there it's a scholarship for DACA people, dreamers, and they really showed me a lot of different resources. So they the scholarship and can give you a loan for that amount, or they could ask for to use some of their amounts, but they also tell you other resources. So they let me know that the Mexican consulate can actually help pay for it, if not all, if not some, at least some of times all of it. And so when I found that out, I've been going to them, and it does add some more things you got to do, but definitely worth $495. But thankfully, after getting to know all these resources, that I actually found a way to pay it without necessarily having to get out of my own pocket. But yeah, just things like this that people I think need to know, and it can really help out. I know it helped out with me tremendously.
So that was Carlos sharing about his experience getting financial help to pay for DACA, something that's not free, as we said before, and that definitely does add some financial anxiety. And there are other sources of anxiety that come from having DACA. And specifically, these anxieties come from how much information, private information, we share in order to have the privilege to work in this country. There's a lot of talk about how phones have so much of our data, right? Social media collects all this information about you to target ads to you. And when, reflecting on it, having DACA was kind of like that in the sense that we gave so much of our information, our personal information, to the government, just because we wanted to work, just because we wanted to help our families out. We surrendered a lot of our privacy, and this was done through fingerprints, where after we submitted our application, if everything went well with it and they received our payment, they would schedule an appointment for us to go and put our fingerprints, where they would do a very broad background check. And it is with this background check that the government can tell whether you are a law-abiding citizen. And my question to you listeners is, how much of your own privacy would you be willing to give up in order to remain in this country? And as we listen to Stephanie's thoughts on the emotions that she felt during this process, I would like the listeners to put themselves in this position. And I think the word that sticks out to me is vulnerability, right? And how vulnerable one makes ourselves in order to be part of this program.
Well, when I had to go to those offices, my uncle actually took me, and I asked him, I was like, what, asked him like what the whole process was, and he explained it to me. But as a first time person, it was terrifying for me because I had always been like in the shadows, I guess. Like, I haven't been exposed to anything. I've always been in my house or with my friends, and I guess it was just like terrifying knowing that immigration has my information, and it just added a bunch of stress, and I started to overthink it a lot. And but like right now, like nothing has happened, but still like a fear in my head, like, oh, what if something does happen, because immigration has your info and they can just come and get you, I guess. So it's terrifying. Yeah. When I was starting the process, I was terrified. And I even told my mom, I was like, oh, well, the downside of this is that my information is being exposed to people. And my mom was like, oh, well, yeah, that's what, that's what comes with, trying to get DACA.
Besides vulnerability, one of the emotions that I strongly believe DACA recipients go through a lot is fear, right? And I think growing up for me in the East Coast, this fear wasn't as bad as those that didn't grow up in such a diverse environment. And here's Carlos telling us a story about how, in his context, in his environment, saying you had DACA could actually put you in danger.
In Idaho and Delaware, those are really my two main experiences, like living wise. But in Idaho, I basically lived there till I was 18, and it's a lot more conservative. So I would hide my DACA status every time. I think I still have some friends. Well, I mean, but some people that know me that still don't know my immigration status or how it is or how it works necessarily. Uh, if they ask me, I'd just be like, yeah, I have a green card or this and that. But it's because, over there in Idaho, it can be scary, at least how people react to finding out you're an immigrant. But yeah, so kind of keep it on the down low. I had like a friend, a really close friend of mine. He we went to school together, everything. It wasn't until like a month before I left to Delaware that he told me he had DACA, and then I told him I had DACA. So this whole time we were friends, and neither of us knew each one of us had DACA.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow, that's crazy.
yeah. Like he was like, "Why are you going to Delaware?" And I was like, "Oh, well, you know, like I'm gonna be honest, bro. Like, you know, I got DACA, so we can't really go to school, you know." He's like, "Yeah, bro, I have DACA too." I was like, "What, for real?" Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So like that's how scary it is over there, you know, because we're not
Right.
messing around. I think it's a little bit better now, you know, time's progressing, but yeah, it's still bad. But then I went to Delaware and it's like a complete 180. Like everyone over, well, first off, the people there that were part of the scholarship all were DACA or TPS or undocumented.
Yeah.
Um, and so there not only was I saying I had DACA, but I was encouraged to, you know, express my stories. And like I went to like different like Methodist churches around in the area and like with a bunch of other students, and we'd like explained our stories and everything. And like so I went from hiding my legal status for years, like my whole life, to just completely sharing my whole story like in a matter of like months. So that
Wow.
was like crazy to me, like just knowing that I could actually say it and like feel at least somewhat safe, at least in my immediate area, that nobody would ridicule me for that.
Now, let's fast forward to September 5th, 2017. It was on this day that DACA was rescinded, and it was a day that changed the lives of many, primarily because so many of us had come to learn how to live in this program, and all of a sudden, it was gone.
I'm here today to announce that the program known as DACA that was effectuated under the Obama administration is being rescinded.
And just like that, Jeff Sessions had ended this program that had been a lifeline for many. And I think the community was left with lots of questions. For example, like what would happen to the work permit? Would they still be able to work? How would they go to school? I think for me, that's what happened. I was just left wondering how my life would change from that moment on. And I remember seeing this announcement on the internet, and I just was honestly not surprised because of the administration at the time. But I think most of all, I was just concerned for my fellow recipients. Here's Stephanie telling us about her experience seeing the program being rescinded and then going back and forth to it being open again.
I actually have like a funny story. Well, I kind of try to make it funny out of this, but my process was like stopped 2 times on like the same week of my birthday.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like when I first was about to apply, you know, I had went to speak with the lawyers and whatever, and then, you know, they decided to come out with the, oh, it's like, you know, like old applicants can apply. And I was like, oh, great. And it was like before my birthday, or it was after my birthday. And then again, this time it happened on my birthday week. And so it's bad luck that I carry apparently on my birthdays now.
And it is here where we can start our conversation about what it means to be part of a country, right? As recipients, we grew up here all of our lives, but here you have a program that goes from existing to not existing. So this makes you, as a recipient, think, do I belong or do I not belong? And here's where we can start a conversation about how at times being in this program meant feeling as though we were countryless, right? Because we're here we're in the program. They accept us at one point, they don't in the other. We think back to our countries of birth. We're not really as familiar with them as we are here. So this is Carlos talking to us a little bit about how this feeling relates to his story.
If I ever have the opportunity so also just in case, I don't know if you've mentioned it, but like DACA recipients can't leave the country.
Right.
It's undocumented. And but so basically, if I ever for some reason had the opportunity to go back to Mexico, I take it in a heartbeat. But I think my family members would definitely consider me American. And here I'm like, it's funny, I'm more considered a Mexican. So it's like kind of like you can't have it both ways. I don't know. It's just funny to me. But it just feels like I'm neither one or the other at times, and sometimes I'm too much of one and not enough of the other. Like, I know I'm both Mexican and from the United States. I don't think Mexico or the United States have been good with immigration, the treatment of like Central Americans crossing. How are we just doing this? Like we're all trying to help each other out, but no, like it's
In this conversation of belonging, I want to bring up that sometimes it's actually other people who make us feel that we don't belong. For example, growing up, and to this day, I hear that because I don't have an accent, I'm more American than I am Mexican. And this often comes from people around me, and it's very natural when it comes out from them, right? But it makes me feel as though they're removing a part of me. And of course, like, I don't listen, and I'm Mexican, and that's nothing. Like, just because people believe otherwise, then doesn't make it true. But Carlos and Stephanie also have some similar experiences of other people trying to define who they are. And so growing up in this program, it's definitely given us this exposure to how other people try to define who we are.
So my friend, she told me, she was like, oh, well, there's this boy that, he wants to meet you and whatever. And I was like, okay, he's an interesting person. Because, he's Hispanic, and he asked me where I'm from. And I was like, oh, I'm Mexican. And he asked me, were you born here? And, obviously knowing his political views, I told him I was born here because, I was afraid. And he was like, oh, really? I didn't think you were born here just for the fact that you have an accent. And I'm like, what? It bothered me a lot because it's like, why are you assuming where I was born? If I don't know, it just bothered me a lot. And so, I went to ask my other friends. I was like, oh, do you think I have an accent or whatever? And they were like, oh, no, like, I don't think you have an accent. And it just, like, threw me off. And then the second story is, so I've had, I actually had a combo with one of my friends, like, these past few days. And I asked him, I was like, oh, where do you think I'm from? And he just started naming, like, a lot of different countries. But he didn't mention Mexico. And I was, why haven't you mentioned Mexico? And he was like, oh, I don't know, you just don't look Mexican. I was like, what makes you think I'm not Mexican? And he was like, I don't know, you just dress like a white girl. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, no. Then I told him, I was like, oh yeah, I'm Mexican. And he was like, oh really? And like, a lot of people seem to be surprised that I'm Mexican, and many people say that it's because I dress like a white girl. Which it's like funny, but it's like I don't think I dress like a white girl. I just, I feel like, I just dress like I normally dress, or like, so it's kind of like funny, but it's also kind of weird that people don't really think I'm Mexican, and when I tell them that I'm Mexican, they're just surprised, and I'm just like, oh, it's really weird. I don't know how to explain it.
One question I would ask them is like, so, like, I'm Mexican. Like, how in your opinion should I be dressing? Like,
Yeah, yeah, and it's so weird because even my Hispanic friends, like, my Hispanic friends are like, oh, like they don't think I'm How would I explain it? They think I'm white. I dress white. I act like I'm a white girl. But then with my white friends, they think I'm too Hispanic as well.
Yeah, I think I have, some like when I was growing up in like high school, I played soccer, but at first, like a lot of my people that I call friends now didn't like accept me. And they were like, I guess like in quotes, the like Mexican soccer players, stereotypical, right? And they kind of try to exclude me a little bit because I don't know exactly how to put it, but essentially, I basically focused on studying and they didn't. They kind of excluded me from that because they thought I was just like, I don't know, like trying to be white or something, or like they try to correlate how much you tried at school with like your identity. And it's funny, like, I have Hispanic friends and white friends, and when I'm with my Hispanic friends, they feel like I'm too white, and then when I'm with my white friends, they feel like I'm too Mexican. I don't know, it's funny. But finally having like being accepted for who you are, it was a big relief for me. Eventually my friends did like start talking to me and this and that, and like they were like, okay, just trying hard at school or whatever, it doesn't make you like different from us, and then now we're really good friends. But yeah, it's just weird having someone else tell you who you are.
and to build on this idea of other people putting an identity on us, we can include legislators on this. And specifically, we can include how the dreamer narrative has been used at the Congress level. And personally, I disagree with the dreamer narrative. I don't like the idea of criminalizing my mother just because I want to benefit from this narrative that legislators use in order to make us seem as though coming here was not our fault, that it wasn't a choice, right? And I honestly believe that if there was somebody who deserves to be called a dreamer, it would be my mom. Like, she dreamt of a better future for me, and just like many others, the parents decided to come here because they knew that there was more opportunities here. And for us to be in this position where, in order for our personal stories to advance in this country, we would need to put our parents in the back burner. I don't think that's fair. And so that's why I don't subscribe to the dreamer narrative. And I asked Stephanie and Carlos on their thoughts on it.
So like for me, yeah, I definitely don't agree with that either. Just hearing like people talk that's just the one thing that I hate. Like, people don't look at least that's how I feel, that don't look at me like human, like I'm a human. Like, imagine saying that about your parents. Like, oh man, like why'd you come look for a better life, and not want your kids to be hungry, and this and that, have them, give them more opportunities. Like, that's just crazy. Like, no, you would never go up to your parents and say that. Like, I'm 100% grateful for my parents, everything they've done for me and my sister, and it's been, if they gave me the choice of getting citizenship, but like having my parents deported, or having DACA taken away, I would never even consider like having them deported or anything. Like, I'd rather them take away my DACA than have them, being ridiculed further. And I don't know. It's just, of course, I don't want anything bad to happen to my parents, and having
Exactly.
these people talk like that, it's just like, like, am I just like some sort of like joke to you? Like, I'm a human being. Like, don't talk to. Why would you talk to about anybody's parents? Like, I don't know. It's just weird.
I don't want to blame my mom and my dad for bringing me here because they wanted a better life. I'm just like really grateful for being here. So I just don't want people to blame my parents. And so like the way that politicians view us or our parents or whatever, they think that we're a joke, but it's frustrating because they've never I feel like they've never really has dealt with this, or I feel like they just assume what they want to assume, if that makes sense, and just go along with it. But I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, yeah, you are. You're good.
But it's like frustrating because they want to say like the right things, but it doesn't seem sincere or honest coming from them.
What I wondered next was if Stephanie and Carlos had the opportunity to speak with these legislators, what would they tell them?
I think it's hard. I've had some of my friends, go and lobby for DACA and getting us a pathway to citizenship, and hearing their stories of how dismissive legislators are, and like the cynic in me, like thinks like it doesn't matter what I say because at the end of the day they're just worried about their bottom line, how much money and this and that, and like many votes and all. Like they don't really care about us. But if I did have the opportunity, it'd be just to let them know that we're no different. Like honestly, like we just want a better life. We want to have a happy life, and we want to be able to do what makes us happy without being ridiculed of the way we look or who we are.
I actually want to be in like government in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And so something I will I will hold onto when I hopefully be in government is that I'll fight for undocumented people, because you see all these politicians and they're white, rich, a lot of privilege, and then they try to make it seem like they're fighting for us, but are they really fighting for us? Like, we know they're not fighting for us. They're just trying to get the votes. They're just trying to make it seem like they care about us, but they don't really care about us. All they care about is just getting votes, getting paid a lot more. And it's really frustrating because I want them, like, I sort of want them to feel the fear that I have and the pain that I have suffered. It's really frustrating because they're never going to experience what we've experienced before. And I sort of want them to experience that so that they know the struggles that we've gone through.
Despite of everything that has happened with DACA being rescinded, with it being brought back, I still have lots of hope for DACA recipients. I want to see a future where immigrants are, like in general, are more respected and not frowned upon. Whether you have DACA, whether you have temporary protection status, also known as TPS, whether you have no papers at all, you're fully undocumented. That's my vision for the future, and that's where my hope lies. These are Stephanie's and Carlos's thoughts on where their hope lies.
I think we've been let down a lot of times. And although I definitely don't trust politicians, what I do trust is in our community. I think facing these adversities has brought us close together, and we've created really a network of just helping each other out. Even if at like the microscopic level, just our families, and just listening and helping, and that's where my hope lies. It's in who we have become, and what we're gonna go do is gonna happen regardless of what status is on our background. You know, it doesn't matter what that the politicians, you know, at the end of the day don't really have our best interest in mind, but I know that our community will definitely help each other out, and that's where my hope lies. And you know, I do hope eventually to get a pathway to citizenship, but not just for me, you know, for my family, and help them out, and you know, just keep it going, because once we have these opportunities, we can't forget of how much we struggled, and try to help out others so they don't have to face what we did.
I want to say that I hope that there's like a big change, like a pathway to citizenship for everyone under this administration. But if we're going to be realistic, I don't really know if it's going to happen. Because, you know, every time a politician runs, they make a promise, but it never happens, you know? So, you know, I've told my family, I was like, I don't really think, I'm not really hopeful that there's going to be something under this administration. And they're like, oh my God, why are you being so negative? And I'm just like, I just don't want to keep my hopes up for something that might not even happen. So I have to like think realistic. But you know, I do hope that there is something that they do give a pathway to citizenship for everyone, not just a certain group of people. I do want it to be for everyone because you know, my mom was an essential worker during the pandemic, and thankfully she never got COVID during this whole time. But I do feel like you know she deserves a pathway to citizenship because of her, you know, the country didn't fall down, if that makes sense. And because of other people as well.
All right, migrants with migrants listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode. And if there's one thing that could summarize this whole conversation, is that we gotta love ourselves. Whether you're undocumented, documented, with TPS, our stories are so powerful and so filled with instances where we've shown resilience and we've overcome so many obstacles that there's so much to be proud of. And we can't let other people try to define our identity. Aha, you thought we were done. Nope. To wrap up, I just asked Carlos and Stephanie, what would they tell a listener who has gone through a similar experience?
I would just like to let, you know, whoever listens, let them know that we're human and we're gonna live this experience together and help each other out. At the end of the day, that's all we're fighting for, regardless of fighting for, I mean, we are fighting for citizenship, no doubt, but at the end of the day, we're just fighting to be treated like human beings. And just know that we're all in this together, and it might be little things here and there that you do, but just we're gonna help each other out, and you're not alone.
Exactly. What about you, Stephanie?
I think something that I want to share is, you know, to keep going. My middle school teacher, she said, as if one door closes, then another door opens. So, you know, just keep going.